count down. 3, 2, 1.
3, 2, 1, go.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Strauss Cafe Podcast. I'm Lee Strauss, and this is my husband, Norm Strauss. We are the hosts of the Strauss Cafe Podcast, and this is our very first episode. So we want to take some time to just talk about why we're starting a podcast when there are so many podcasts already started out there. What's your take on that?
Ours is going to be better than all the rest. That's my take on it. More interesting, more erudite.
It'll be more interesting for a certain group of people who have a similar interests that we have, which fall into primarily the cozy historical mystery fiction world and also just historical trivia, just being interested in all things history.
Yeah.
So I guess we can talk about who I am. I'm an author. I have written many books. My primary series is Ginger Gold Mystery Series. I'm just ready to publish the 28th book in that series. So it's a long-running series. The first book came out in 2017. So I've been publishing those regularly for about 5.5 years. And then there are also 2 spin-off series, one which is a co-write with Norm, and we also did short stories which Norm wrote, Lady Gold Investigates. And it's pretty much consumed our world for since that time, I think, just building and creating a world where our characters live and breathe, and how the backdrop of the mysteries have these interesting historical, social issues or events that are going on.
Why don't you mention, how, because Ginger Gold is not your first series, so you've been writing since what?
For a long time, let's just put it there.
So, well over 70 books she's written.
Yes, that is true. Well, I started off writing in other genres. I started off really as a young adult author. I wrote a series called the Clockwise series, which is time travel, which also has strong historical components. I did dystopian YA and historical YA. I also moved then into romance, sweet romance. I did a couple middle grade books. So I was trying a lot of different things. I had gotten an agent with my Clockwise books, and that was right around the 2010 era when Kindle and self-publishing, Kindle Direct Publishing was coming online, and people were starting to try that. And since, for whatever reason, my agent wasn't able to sell my young adult time travel book, I just suggested that maybe I should try self-publishing it, and she encouraged me to do that. So I did that in 2011, and that's when I would say was the beginning of my publishing business, La Plume Press. So Clockwise was the first one, and then I had some books that were kind of just sitting in the drawer that I just published, and some of them I've taken down since then too, but it's all been a big learning curve. But I think you wanted to talk about when Ginger Gold came onto the scene.
Yeah.
We were on a little vacation in Mexico.
Sayulita.
Yes, a working vacation. So we both worked remotely, or really, do you want to talk about the type of work you did?
I was working as a musician, as a singer-songwriter, performer, mostly in the last 10 years, primarily in Germany and Europe. So I was on the road a lot doing concerts, and so my world was songwriting and recording and producing others. 2018 is when I came off the road, but Ginger Gold happened before that, 1 year before that, right?
Well, I was investigating the possibility of writing in the mystery genre. I was still writing nursery rhyme suspense, which is sort of a mishmash of genres. So it's just more like young adult, new adult, because it was college setting. It had supernatural, well, not supernatural, but more like science fiction elements, dystopian elements, romance between the two leads. So it was a mix of everything. But what I had discovered, and what a lot of authors discovered, is if you can't really clearly place on the Amazon shelf where your book is meant to go, Amazon doesn't know where to put it, and then doesn't know who to show it to. So it becomes discoverability and visibility became very difficult. So at that time, in those years, I was thinking about, jumping into the mystery writing realm.
So when we were in Mexico, did you upload it then for the first time?
No, I was still writing it. Okay. I was out by the little pool in the back of our casita there, writing every morning a little bit about on Murder on the SS Rosa. And before that time, even though I was a reader of mysteries, and when I would go to the library and whatever, I was looking for a book for myself to read for fun and pleasure, I always went to the mystery rack. But I didn't, as a writer, feel like I was competent and had the skill set to write a mystery yet. Those first years where I was writing every other genre. Because even though every genre has an element of mystery, the true whodunit genre, you have to, in a way, outwit your reader and be one step ahead of them, a little bit clever. You're creating a literary puzzle, and that to me was always intimidating and daunting. But by the time I got to that part of my writing life journey, I decided I was going to try it. So that was my first one. So then I had to go, well, what kind of mystery did I want to write? And so I knew that I liked history, so I thought, okay, I'm going to do historical mystery, and so what setting? And I thought, well, the 1920s are so fun. And I had been watching the Miss Fisher murder mysteries on TV and had read a few of, what's her name now? I don't want to get it wrong. A few of the authors' books, but there wasn't a lot yet at that time of books written in the 1920s for cozy historical mysteries. So I went to Amazon and I searched the shelf, and there was just a few authors, including, is it Kelly Greenwood? Carrie Greenwood. Her name's Carrie Greenwood, and Reese Bowen were among the tops, and there was a few others. So it turned out that it was a hungry but underfed market. So really, to my surprise and your surprise, when I published the first Ginger Gold book and the second and third, they really sold way better than anything I had ever written before. And so that encouraged me to keep writing in that genre, and I've been writing pretty much that genre ever since. But I'm not the only one who's been writing in that genre. Since I jumped in, a slew of other authors have jumped in the last 5 years, and I would say now it's a saturated market. There's a lot. If you're interested in reading cozy historical mystery set in 1920s, you now have a lot to choose from.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the way that I came into it writing, because I'd never written before, lots of songs, and from the stage I tell a lot of stories normally in my concerts, but I'd never written anything before. So in 2018, and when I was thinking I have to stop touring so much, which is another long story, but it was Lee who kind of urged me to start writing to help her in her business, and I was very tentative at first. So if any of you out there are kind of thinking about writing, this was a little bit of my journey. I started just with a journal entry, right?
Yes, because one of the things I had decided to do, I had to give my character Ginger Gold a believable reason as to why she would have all these sort of the skill sets of a sleuth, the unusual skill sets that most women wouldn't have had, especially in those days. And so I'm like, well, they just came off of World War I, and I know that World War II had female spies. I'm assuming World War I had some as well. And as it turns out, they did. They're not as well documented, but there were female spies in World War One. So I decided that that was how she was going to know how to do things like pick locks and start, replace a broken fan belt with her nylons and the numerous other things, forensic type things, medical things, because she was on the front lines in World War One. But also, as a business person, I was trying to build my newsletter, and I thought, well, what a great incentive this would be if I could give my newsletter readers little tidbits of Ginger's life as a British Secret Service agent. And sometimes, at first, I had written, I think I wrote 4 or 5 books before the first journal entry came out. And so while I was writing those, I was just plucking ideas of what Ginger could have done to explain what she was now doing in the book I was writing. So I had these little events that I could draw from for the journal entries.
And it was also about Daniel Gold and Ginger meeting him.
Yes, it's right. It was prior to her. So then it went back to being prior to her life in the war. So I decided I'm going to take her right back to when she lived in Boston, because she was from England, born in London, but her British father had moved to Boston and married an American woman and sort of made his fortune there. And his idea was he was going to help a family friend out in England who had lost their wealth, but they had titles, right? And titles were very important back in those days, and they're still kind of cool now. And so he arranged this marriage with Daniel Gold. He was going to help him out financially, and Lord Daniel Gold would be a baron, was going to give Ginger the title.
So my first thing that I wrote, if I remember right, was Daniel Gold takes Ginger to a baseball game.
Yes, in Boston, because Fenway Park was really new on the scene then. And so sort of going full circle, I'm writing these journal entries, or I want to write these journal entries. I think I wrote a few, and then Norm's coming off the road, and I'm like, why don't you help me write these journal entries? And especially these ones with Daniel Gold, it can be more like from his perspective.
So it was pretty daunting at first, because I'd never really written before like that. And so then I started writing more journal entries. Then we began with the Lady Gold Investigates series, which I started writing. And when I say I wrote the draft. So Lee wrote over top of that to give it her own style and her own voice. Yeah,
that's a typical co-write example of when you say like a book has been written by more than one person, by 2 people. One person might write the first draft, or they might alternate chapters and write, and then the other person writes and edits on top of it and make sure that the voice is consistent throughout the books. So once Norm had gotten down the writing of the journal entries, which were about 500 words, which he had really no problems doing, I just sort of encouraged you then to just to think about yourself stringing journal entries together until you had like 10,000 words strung together.
1,000 words each, very quickly.
Yeah. Yes, so some of the journal entries would get to be 1,000. So I'm like, oh, it's only like 10 journal entries. So we would plot a short story idea together, and the scenes, sort of the 3-act structure of the short story, and then he would write that, and I would then rewrite it. And that's how we kind of did the Rosa Reed mysteries too. Yeah, that
grew into the Rosa Reed mysteries,
which is the future daughter of Ginger Gold.
Yeah, they take place in 1950s California. More of a 50s vibe, of course. Rock and roll, the birth of rock and roll, and all that stuff. I was going to say, as a writer, one of the things is you really get attached to your characters as a writer. Mm-hmm. And writing Lady Gold Investigates, which, in case you don't know what that is, Lady Gold Investigates they're not murder mysteries, they're short stories about stuff that Ginger and Felicia.
Yeah, it starts off with her sister-in-law Felicia. In book, I think 4, one of the books, Ginger Gold decides to open up an investigative office in London. Yeah. She has a Regent Street dress shop, and then at some point like I said, I'm in book 28, so I've lost track of where everything happens. I'm going to have to go back and revisit some of this. But at some point, she decides she's going to just actually open up an office.
So the Lady Gold Investigates books are just more lighthearted mysteries. Case of the missing cricket bat and or paddle or whatever you call it. I had to do a lot of research in cricket for that one, and just things like that, missing Christmas goose and all that stuff. But I really got into the characters, especially particularly Scout, because you see kind of behind the scenes a little bit with Scout, and also
Well, who is Scout? They don't know who Scout is, maybe.
Well, you tell.
Scout is a character that Ginger meets on the very first book on Murder on the SS Rosa. He's a street urchin who is working with his older cousin in third class, and Scout's job is to look after the animals. And that's how Ginger first meets him, because she has a Boston Terrier dog called Boss, after Boston. and she gets quite attached to this little boy in the first book, and then over the course of books their lives interconnect, and ultimately Scout becomes a bigger part of Rosa's life.
And the other character that I really enjoyed writing was Magna Jones. Magna, for those of you who don't know, was also a spy like Ginger in the First World War, and so in the journals you get to know Magna, and she's quite a interesting character, and the interplay between her, the discussions between her and Ginger are sometimes quite comical.
That's because
she's quite a
acerbic, maybe.
What's that?
Acerbic.
Acerbic.
She's a little bit hard-edged,
Yeah.
hard-nosed. She's very opposite to Ginger, who's very glass half full type of person, despite all of her hardships in life. You know, the loss of her husband in the war and different things that she's suffered. She's an outgoing, sort of upbeat personality who sort of believes the best in people, and Magna Jones is kind of the opposite of that.
Yeah, and Ginger's always a little bit worried that Magna's going to go too far, and very grateful that she doesn't carry a gun, for example.
Yeah.
And
But she's very skilled. So she shows up in the journal entries, Magna Jones, and then the later books.
Yeah.
The later, I don't really remember which book she came into first. And she'll continue to be in the books as they go along. The other cool thing about Magna Jones too is she shows up in the Velvet Spy duology. There's 2 volumes, and that's really when I finished the journals. And Norman and I finished them. We're like, what do we do with this now? This was all just exclusive to my newsletter, and it was unedited, and sometimes it didn't flow in certain areas because of, they weren't put out on a consistent basis necessarily, sort of just like whenever. But we had all of this material, all this content, and it had a lot of potential. It was good. I mean, my newsletter readers, most of them really enjoyed it. So we decided to get them properly edited, added new scenes, filled it out, where there was spaces and stuff, and we published those as the Velvet Spy.
It became an epic 2-volume adventure.
Yeah, so there's quite a lot of world-building material for the Ginger Gold world that has developed over the course of the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah. By the way, for those of you who are maybe wondering, where are we? We live in a city called Kelowna in BC in the Okanagan Valley.
In Canada.
The
western part of Canada.
It's kind of a semi-arid, deserty kind of place, a little bit like Arizona, perhaps. People have compared it to Arizona a lot, although we get more of a winter here than they would.
A bit like Northern California, or Santa
maybe.
Barbara area.
Yeah. But we've also lived in other places. We've as a couple, and by the way, we've got, I don't know if you mentioned this already, we have 4 children who are all grown up now, and we have 1 grandchild.
Grandson.
And we have moved that's our coffee machine.
We got a new coffee maker that has a mind of its own. It just decides, I think I'm going to clean myself right now.
Yeah. I always say we maybe got this coffee machine on special because it was an OCD coffee machine. Always wanting to clean itself. Anyways, What were we saying? Oh yeah, we've moved a lot, more times than we actually can count. It's somewhere 34, 35 times as a couple.
We've
but
moved 3 times in the last 3 years.
yeah, we're trying to stop that.
We are stopping that.
We don't enjoy moving. It just happened to be because of how we made our
just
living.
how it happened.
Especially me as a musician. But we've lived in Boston. That's what I was trying to get to.
Yes, we have lived in Boston. That's sort of why I enjoyed setting it there.
Yeah. So
I've set other books there.
haven't been to Fenway, but driven past it many times.
A modern version of Fenway.
Yeah. Boston is a nice place. I think it's one of the most beautiful cities in the United States.
It is lovely. It is really lovely, and it's very old world European bit. It's got the oldest tavern in America there. In fact, my spin-off series, Higgins and Hawk, the character Haley Higgins is Ginger's good friend, and in the Ginger Gold series for 8 books, I think, before she leaves and I do the spin-off, and that spin-off is set in Boston as well. And there is one of the books, I think the first one is Death at the Tavern, which is that old tavern in Boston.
And we've also lived in Germany for a total of something like close to 8 years in total.
Yeah, it's been a bit of on and off thing.
So because we lived in Germany, we were able to travel to London a fair number of times.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember for one book, and I can't remember which book it was, but
It was one of the romances.
one of the romance books, we decided we were living in Dresden. I don't know if this is on the topic or not, but this is where I'm going. And because we're talking about books and researching for books, we decided one of the books had a chase scene in it.
Yeah.
Right? And it was a car chase scene, and we wanted to set it in a small town on the coast, on the east coast of London,
southern southeast is where we had to put it. Was it something on sea?
Yeah. So the city we were living in, Dresden, is not too far from Berlin, and in Berlin you can get a flight to London very easily and quite cheaply. So we decided to go for a weekend and spend the weekend in a little town. Do you remember the name of the town?
Something on
Something on Sea.
Somewhere near the Something on Sea.
We got a charming little bed and breakfast place or whatever it was, right on the ocean, right on a pier. And I remember walking around the small town, charting out, the size of the alleys, and can a car go around this corner properly? And
the narrow streets, cobblestones.
And so that you could get kind of a visual of how to do a chase scene. That's how dedicated we are to our craft.
Yes, it was a lot easier when we were living in Germany to pop in and out of different places. In fact, all the romances are set in Germany, except for this one book that we were researching. It's in England.
Yeah.
So
there's one romance book that you based a little bit out of a little club in Dresden.
Yeah,
where I used to play once in a while.
Where we lived when
the Blue Note Cafe.
Yeah, I did. I like to use real world places along with fictional places. When you're doing historical books, using a real place, you can get a lot of historical context that can give your book a 3D dimensional type of feel, or inspire new creative or mystery angles that you wouldn't think of otherwise.
So what do we want to do with these podcasts? Have we talked about that yet?
No, we haven't talked about that yet, Norm.
Okay. It's on your listy there.
But, that was a question at the beginning of this podcast, is why are we doing podcasts? And one of the reasons we wanted to start doing podcasts is because I am starting, or maybe by the time you see this, I will have started a Patreon community. And part of what I want to offer our patrons is an insight into my life and Norm's life as a creative couple and as writers, but also to highlight different books. I mean, a lot of them will be my books, from the beginning, or some more recent books, and to touch on the historical trivia and really maybe unpack that I did in the researching of these books. For instance, my most recent book, book 28, is called Murder at the Maharaja's Courts, which is set in India. during the imperial times when Britain was the empire there. And there was a lot of things that were going on in 1929 in India, between India and Britain. It was the year before Gandhi did his protest, and a lot of it had to do with the British SALT Act. So I was unaware of this when I was starting out the book and started writing the book, and so that's just one example of things that I think would be interesting to talk about and sort of explore. Well, what was the British SALT Act, and how did it impact the people, and how was it part of the backdrop of my books? That's just an example of different things I think we'll do in the podcast.
We had this idea that many of you, if you're reading 1920s cozy mysteries or historical cozy mysteries, it must mean that you're somewhat of a history buff. I'm a huge history buff. Mm-hmm. And so we thought it would be a cool idea through some of these podcasts, when we're discussing specific books, to actually figure out what it's like to go back in time a little bit and see the world through Ginger and Basil's eyes. What did the world look like to them living in London in, say, 1925? What was in the headlines? What films were coming out? Who were the celebrities of the day? What cultural issues were going on? What was going on in London at the time? What was it like to get around London during those days?
Yes. Or even what was going on in the world globally, in America, North America. We're from Canada.
So we want to try to, as best we can, to unwrap that a little bit and go back in time, and based on which particular book
on the book that we're highlighting. And for me personally, like I said, I am forgetting about the books that I've written and the research I've done. So I think these podcasts will be personally fulfilling for me as well, because I can go back and go, oh yeah, I remember, and I can talk about anecdotes and things that I was thinking about at the time I was writing a particular scene or passage. So I hope that as you know, people who read my books and are a fan of some of my stories will join us on this podcast and would enjoy some of that material as well. Yeah. So other than that, to kind of wrap things up, like I said, I've already talked about that the book 28 in the Ginger Gold Mysteries is coming. There are going to be only a few more left in the 1920s series mysteries. So we will be talking about in depth over time our plans to, as we are going towards the finale of the series, but also what is next for Ginger Gold. This is not the last hurrah for her. So stay tuned for more information about that. And is there anything else, Norm?
No, I can't think of anything right now, but I'm looking forward to diving into some of this stuff with everybody.
Yes, I think it's going to be fun. In the meantime, I'm not sure when you see this. We're in November 2025, so I think tomorrow is Thanksgiving. So happy Thanksgiving to our American friends. You'll probably see this when it's over, but just know that we were thinking of you.
And I'm sure you were thinking of us when we had our Thanksgiving
in October. Yes, and I do have a blog post that I wrote that explains the differences between the two Thanksgiving celebrations and the histories behind that. I'll save that for a podcast for next year, I guess. But if you're curious, you can go to my blog posts on my website, which I should probably tell you is leestraussbooks.com. So please go ahead and check that out.
I must not have read that blog post because I don't have a clue.
You would be really interested in it.
I would be.
You should go read it.
What are the differences between Canadian and United States Thanksgiving celebrations and the reasons for it? I haven't got a clue.
Okay, well, there you go. So there's a little homework for Norm and for you if you're interested. So I think we'll wrap this up. So thanks again for listening to us and joining us, and we hope to see you next time.
Bye-bye.